So remember, basic functions are graph an interval from -2 to 2. You don't need -10 to 10. You don't want -10 to 10. Makes your graph too small. Okay? And then you use a reasonable interval for your y-axis. Use a range. Okay. Now, -1 to the 13th is what? Okay, well, we had some debate in the class. Is it 1 or is it -1? Or is it maybe something else? Well, let's see. What's -1 squared? Well, let's be careful. It's -1 times -1, which is 1, because 1 times 1 is 1, and negative times negative gives you a positive, right? Then, what's -1 cubed? Well, -1 times -1 times -1, right? Of course, if we group these two -1s here, we see it's -1 squared times -1, right? Pretty there. And that equals 1 times -1, which is -1. Okay? Well, what's -1 to the 4th? Well, we're going to write it out. We're not going to write them all out. This may be the last one I'll write out. Okay? It's this. Well, if I group it like this, you see that it's -1 cubed times -1, which equals -1 times -1, which is 1. Right? Now, I'm going to abbreviate this a little bit. -1 to the 5th, not -5. -1 to the 5th. I'm not going to write out all the -1s. I'm just going to observe that's -1 to the 4th times -1, isn't it? Because you're going to have 5 of them. You group 4 of them. You get -1 to the 4th. And -1 to the 4th is 1. That's 1 times -1, which is -1. And -1 to the 6th is -1 to the 5th times -1, which is -1 times -1, which is 1, etc. Now, what's going to happen when we get down to -1 to the 13th? What's going to be -1 to the 12th times -1, right? Well, it might be obvious what the pattern is, but let's look at the pattern here. Okay, we got the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th powers of -1. Okay, 2nd power is 1, 3rd power is -1, 4th power is 1, 5th power is -1, 6th power is 1. It alternates. And it's clear from this process that we've laid out at this point that it's always going to alternate. And how does it alternate? Well, it looks like on the even numbers it's positive, and on the odd numbers it's negative. Right? Okay? Now, there are other ways we could see that pattern, like we could say, okay, you've got an odd power, it's an even power times -1. And any even power, we can group them in 2's. And all those 2's are 1's, so it's just a bunch of 1's. Okay, and if you understand that, great. But the bottom line is, a lot of times in the homework, I'll ask you to set the value of a variable equal to -1 to a power. Okay? And then maybe use that to make something else randomly a positive or a negative. And you don't need to necessarily understand that, you'll see it. So you got to know what the powers of -1 are. Okay? You also need to be able to do the powers of I. But when we talk about complex numbers, we'll do that. They go in groups of 4. They go in cycles of 4. So we want to understand that. We want to reason it out instead of just remember a rule. We want to see why it is that the odd powers of -1 are 1, and the even, the odd powers of -1 are odd, the even powers are even. Okay? Okay, so let's see. Okay, I want to talk about fractions a little bit again, because that's always a problem due to the deficiencies in our curriculum. Okay? And I want to talk specifically about complex fractions. We talked about fractions last time. We talked a little about it. We talked about it in the context of evaluating the basic functions at the standard points. But what's A divided by B over C? Well, that's A divided by B over C. And what's the rule for dividing by a fraction? You multiply by the reciprocal. And if that doesn't ring a bell, well, again, that's problematic, but and if it doesn't ring a bell, you probably ought to make yourself a note to go visit the mark and talk to a mentor and get a little help putting it together. Alternatively, work through some materials and fractions, because you absolutely got to be able to use them. You got to be able to do them with symbols or with numbers. Okay? And that equals, well, that's A over 1 times C over B, which is A times C over 1 times B, which is AC over B. Once you get to this step, the rest of that follows from what we talked about last time. Okay? So review what we talked about last time. And if you don't get it, you're going to have to do some outside work, because we're not going to teach 5th grade and pre-algebra stuff here. Okay? We're going to use it. Doesn't mean I won't do a video on it, okay, to help you, or to run you off and cause you to look at somebody else's video that does it better. Okay? You know, you can find videos on how to do fractions all over the place, and that's a good way to do it. Okay, so A over B divided by C means what? Well, A over B over C means A over B divided by B, which is, that's by C. So thank you. Keep me focused here. A over B times 1 over C, which is, I'm not going to write the intermediate steps. You're not going to pay attention to them anyway right now, because you're thinking about this, okay? No fault for that. But the intermediate steps are much like these. A times 1 over B times C is A over BC. Okay, what's A over B divided by C over D? Well, that's A over B divided by C over D, which equals A over B times B over C, which equals AB over BC, AB over I'm following patterns real well, they just aren't the right patterns. Let's get it right. It's A over B times B over C. It's AD over BC. See, I messed up D and B just like I did on problem 3 in the homework, right? I'm not used to messing up D and B. I never have any trace of dyslexia that I know about. Except that thing where my eyes just stay crossed. Yeah. Yeah, that bump in the head when I was young. No, seriously. Wash me. Okay, so you need to understand these things. You can't do the arithmetic of basic functions if you don't have the basic fractions. Okay? So when you do 1 over x at 1/2, 1 over negative 1/2 is 1 divided by negative 1/2, which is 1 times negative 2 over 1, which is negative 2, right? Of course, that was in the video on the basic reciprocal function, right? But not everybody will have picked it up. Hopefully most of you did. Yeah, well, so you got negative 2 here. I'm not going to do them all, but you're doing a reciprocal, so it's like this. You don't remember this rule, you remember the idea that this means divide by the fraction, the denominator, and then multiply by the reciprocal, right? Because that's all that we do in any of these. There's only one rule here. And a lot of times when you're learning math in a class where not everybody makes an appropriate effort, you're teaching to the person who makes the least effort, and you give them 10,000 rules when there are only a dozen principles. Here's a rule, here's a rule, here's a rule. No, there's just one rule. When you divide, you multiply by the reciprocal. And there's a reason for that rule, but I'm not going to bore you with it today. Okay? Focus on that rule. You need it.